Hi. In the previous lesson, I talked about making the language on your slides as short and as simple as possible. And we ended up with a slide that mainly consisted of noun phrases. I'd like to continue that in this lesson, but this time to focus on verb phrases. These are very useful when your presentation consists of processes or actions. So, let's get to it. First, let's look at 3 tips to inspire your workers. Tip number 1. People tend to be afraid of new things, so encourage your employees to take risks. Tip number 2. You need to acknowledge and praise success as soon as you see it. And tip number 3. It's important to communicate to find out what people are thinking. You would probably agree that these are good topics, but these are quite long sentences. I'll show you how to shorten them in a simple step-by-step way. Now, as these are actions, we will focus on the verb phrases. So let's look at number 1. People tend to be afraid of new things, so encourage your employees to take risks. Well, the important verb phrase there is in green. Encourage to take risks. Number 2, you need to acknowledge and praise success as soon as you see it. Again, the verb phrase there is acknowledge and praise success. Success is a noun, but it's part of the verb phrase. Number 3, it's important to communicate to find out what people are thinking. And again, the important verb phrase is it is important to communicate, again shown in green. So the green phrases are the ones that we want to focus on now. So what we have now are 3 pretty short phrases that will inspire workers. Encourage your employees to take risks, acknowledge and praise success, and it's important to communicate. We could make them even shorter by mainly focusing on the verb forms. So in number 1, encourage is the verb, so we need encourage. And what are we encouraging? Well, we're encouraging risk. So if we leave it as encourage risks. Number 2, the verbs are acknowledge and praise. And number 3, communicate. So if we remove several words, we've got even shorter phrases. Let's put these verb phrases into a slide. Tips to inspire your workers. Number 1, encourage risk. Number 2, acknowledge and praise. And number 3, communicate. We hope you can see that this is much clearer and more effective than the original text. If we add a little bit of design, we can make this into a nice circle where encouraging risk leads to acknowledging and praising, and that leads to communicating, and so on. Okay, let's practice another example. This one is about how to get people to do complex tasks. First of all, let's look at the key concepts. I'm sure you all know how hard it can be to start and complete a complex task. It's easy to keep putting it off. Here are some tips that I think are helpful in organising yourself or others to get on with a complex task successfully. Number 1, you should break your task down into smaller ones. Number 2, you should make a list of what you're supposed to do. And number 3, your smartphone can be a distractor. So you should hide your smartphone while you're on task. And number 4, you can motivate yourself with a nice treat at the end of a task. So these are all very sensible ways to approach completing a complex task. However, the language on the slide is long and probably difficult to process. So, how can we shorten it? One way to do this is to use the verbs as a series of ways to give advice. Number 1, you should break your task down into smaller ones. So the verb phrase is should break your task down. Number 2, you should make a list of what you're supposed to do. And the important verb phrase there is you should make a list. And then number 3, your smartphone can be a distractor. Hide your smartphone while you are on task. And the the verb phrase is hide your smartphone. And finally, number 4, you can motivate yourself with a nice treat at the end of a task. And the important verb phrase there is motivate yourself with a nice treat. Let's see what we have now. Should break your task down, should make a list, hide your smartphone, and motivate yourself with a nice treat. And actually we can make these phrases even shorter. In number 1 we can remove should and your. In number 2 we can remove should again. And in number 4 we can remove yourself. So finally we have this list of short verb phrases. Break task down, make a list, hide smartphone, and motivate with a nice treat. Okay, let's compare our short list of phrases with the original long list. And I hope you'll agree that it's easier to read the short phrases and listen to the presenter at the same time. It can be challenging for an audience to listen to a presenter and read slides with long sentences on them. So if possible, it's good to try and shorten the language on your slides. In this lesson, we looked at some actions which focus on verb forms, such as motivate yourself with a treat or hide your smartphone. So if you can make the text on your slides as short and as simple as possible, this will really help the audience to understand you better.